message and ask if there was going to be a recording. Hi,
We're on.
everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So to kick things off, my name is Kat Kingshot. I am one of the partners with Striven, who is going to be hosting the webinar today with our wonderful panel. I have spent the past 5 or 6 years recruiting in the sales and CS space, so very excited to hear from our panel of experts and what they have to say. To start with, I do want to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting on the traditional land of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respect to elders past and present. Today, we are talking about the power of collaboration. The subject line we have is creating cross-functionality between CS and sales, which is, I think, what we're all striving to do here. And there is a lot of talk in the market about creating more collaborative teams, especially as the way we're working has changed quite significantly through COVID. So we're seeing that teams are spread out across different geographies. Some are in the office, some aren't. We're targeting different areas and really wanting to make sure that the team is working successfully, and also we're providing a consistent level of experience to customers throughout that journey as well. So very excited to be hearing from the panel today. One thing to kind of just say to start, I looked up a statistic when I was getting ready for this. It said that from the Customer Service Institute, it said 65% of a company's business comes from their existing customers. So thought that was good to kind of point out that it's clear that happy customers are the ones who are often both being retained, but also referring from their network as well. So it would be great to kick things off with introductions from the panel. While we're doing that as well, in the chat, so thank you so much for everyone who's joining online today. If you also want to start asking questions, so to begin with, what is your current biggest challenge that you're experiencing when you're trying to encourage CS and sales collaboration? It would be great to kind of hear what those challenges are while I let our panelists introduce themselves. I'll just kind of go around the box as I see it. So Catherine, if you'd like to go first and then pass it along.
Sure. Thanks, Kat. So I'm Catherine Ballantyne. Today I am Director of Customer Success. I've just joined New Business GitLab. But I've been in technology a very long time, been through multiple different iterations. So I've worked both in the sales side and I've been in customer success for the last 5 years or so. I think there's a great collaboration. I think customer success people can be pre-sales people, can be like there's this combination. If we can get it working together, that it works incredibly well. It can also go very, very badly at times. So excited to have the conversation.
Thanks, Catherine.
Awesome. I'll go next. So Ben Lyons, Managing Director of Trade Funding. I have 17 years sales experience, and I've worked in all facets of sales. So both front end, both retention, channel, direct sales. So all facets of sales across a number of industries, mainly within financial services for the large part. And I've actually had a couple of cross-functional teams I've managed as well. So excited to actually unpack and talk about some of these ways in which we can create collaboration.
Excellent. Also, I'm Michael Hosking. I've had a chance to get to work across the CS space specifically for almost 10 years now, starting working in customer success management in LinkedIn, and getting a chance to get to see that form in LinkedIn, and then moving through to getting to startup businesses out here for the Asia Pacific region, and getting to work as the Director of Customer Success and Operations, building cross-functional teams and the capability across what they do. And most recently, I've got to be working as a consultant, working with my own brand of Success Navigator. And that's where I am now.
Thank you, everyone. Wonderful to have you here. So to kick things off, it would be great to hear some examples, I'm sure, given kind of the breadth of different industries and types and size of companies that you've worked with, Where have you seen this done really well? So what are some great examples where you've seen sales and CS collaborating really well together?
I'll jump in on that and we can go from there. I've got one that's top of mind. In my last employer, we asked sales and customer success to come together to develop a new motion that neither was particularly comfortable with or recognized very well. So we had both teams feeling a little bit uncomfortable about what was it going to look like and how are they going to find success. What came out of the back of that process of them having to come together to get success was a well-oiled motion. The reason it worked well, I think, in the end was, one, they were both trying to solve the same problem. So the KPI was the same, and they were both at the same level. So it meant that the coming together was a solution finding role where they found both challenges, but ultimately success. And it set the groundwork for not only success within that particular process, but just better collaboration across the business on an ongoing basis.
And how did you achieve that? You said, for example, like the KPIs were the same. Who set those and who decided those?
So the business decided. So the business actually said, look, adoption of, this was a bigger organization, 25 years worth of tech history, quite a big tech stack, of which some had been very well adopted, and then other parts of the tech stack hadn't been as well adopted. So the process was, how do we actually get better penetration into those products? And how do we find a motion for that? The alignment came, so the business set the alignment and said, these are the goals we're trying to achieve. So those came in from above. But the people in the field on the ground were asked, how will you achieve this? And then really given carte blanche to actually work through that process within some guidelines. By the way, I work across APJ. So how I saw the solution in Australia versus maybe how I saw the solution in Southeast Asia, Korea, it was different, which is the way of the field. You know, the field's the bridge to the customer, and we will see differences. Like, you've got to get standardization at a global level, but you've got to allow your people in the field to bridge to the customer, because the customer will have different cultural expectations. So enabling a structure that allowed for that freedom with standardization of ultimately what's the value we're trying to bring to the customer in the end, what's the measure of success, standardization on that. I think those were the parameters that made it successful. And goodwill, yeah, from the actual field. A little bit of fear and a little bit of anxiety, but quite a lot of goodwill.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And in terms of, I guess, the big takeaways or the learnings from that, is there anything that either went really well or perhaps you would maybe not do again?
It reminded me that, helping teams find success. So breaking it down into small blocks of successful achievements means that it has ongoing impacts. It's not just about this thing. It's about all the other things that come after that you see more success from for the work that you do early. So actually giving teams space to have the time to actually find the right path and to get mutual agreement is worth the investment. Now, sometimes businesses, they've got to hit certain targets, et cetera, but depending on where you are, whether you're the contributor or you're the leader, if you're the leader, one of your jobs is to actually carve out enough space for the teams to find that rhythm. Because the success it generates is not just about this particular event, it's about all the other ones that come after it. Once you find success, especially, I'm a great believer in sort of, getting comfortable with uncomfortable. Finding success in an uncomfortable space is key to that as well. And yeah, so I think those are the things.
Yeah, absolutely. Breaking things down. I think when you've got one big goal or one big target, it can feel very daunting and overwhelming. So that approach and meeting people where they're at, I think, is so key. So thank you for sharing. We seem to have lost Ben, so hopefully he's on his way back at some point. So Michael, it's you next. I'm curious to know as well where you've seen that kind of some really strong examples of collaboration working in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess for me, probably coming with my most recent roles in consulting has been working with those slightly smaller businesses, building out the Asia Pacific region for them. And I think that, Catherine, what you touched on there is absolutely perfect from a standpoint of bringing the teams together and ensuring there's alignment. And I think that word is just so critical in this. So often we focus on collaboration and strategies to collaborate and things that we need to do. But sometimes I think that it's just understanding each other's roles, understanding where it is that we're actually, where we can benefit, where we can actually hinder, and where it is that we can rely on other people who are actually to do the job, rely on the other team to do it, and when we should be stepping in and doing it. So I think that all of that from a collaboration standpoint is just really critical. Jumping into a couple of specifics and specific examples, and some of the things that I've definitely seen is that feedback side of things. Collaboration is so critical when it comes to feedback and bringing those teams together. If we spend our time all designing our own feedback loops, sales is going to sound like it has a totally different product issue, totally different problems going on, and totally different things that are actually positive. And I think that it's really important when I did an exercise with one of the previous business I was working with, and we were able to bring together all of the product ideas and all of the different elements that we wanted as a CS team and operations function, and then also bring into that the sales side of things. And a lot of the time, though it looked like we had two really, really different lists because they were asking for different product types, that what was actually being asked for had a huge amount of alignment. It was normally that the businesses were trying to achieve very similar things, and one technology change and helping the product team to understand what it is that they actually need to get out of it was heaps more important than the actual specific product idea and what button needs to be where. So allowing the product team to do their job by telling them what we need to achieve rather than what we need to do, and doing that and giving them just a cut through of what it is on, instead of a huge list, bring that list down to what's most important. But yeah, and then I also think through from a collaboration standpoint, some of those benefits as I had with another previous business, I was able to kind of work with a business to build out a really diverse community of customers. And that sounds like it's a purely CS task. It absolutely was not. This was where I was able to bring together sales, bring together the team. All of the webinars we ran, all the times we had customers talking, they were opportunities for advocacy. They were opportunities for us to be able to find customer stories, and they were opportunities for the sales team to let them know what those new products are, what's on the roadmap, what's coming, and how is it that those customers can really get benefit from it. And so watching those kind of things, I think that sometimes we really get stuck on the buzzwords of collaboration, but I think that's really important. There's a couple of different items. It's really looking at ways that your community wants to engage, your customers want to engage, and what it is to the business that will add the most value. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, I don't think you want to be sold a product and then never see that salesperson again, and just, although they can be wonderful, just have the CS team there for you. So it's great to see them coming together. Was that a one-off, or did they say this is something we'll continuously do?
Were you talking about the community side? Sorry.
Yeah. So having both sales reps and CS involved.
Yeah. So again, the example I'm thinking of is what I was doing with Absorb, and that was an ongoing community, and we were doing monthly. It ended up being kind of that quarterly larger group, and in those quarterly larger meetings, that was customers being able demonstrate the good work they're doing, get to show people what they were doing with the platform, really get to emphasize my customer and be able to get them to be able to show everyone how good they are, what they do, which I think there's this scared kind of nature of a lot of businesses going, oh, well, people don't want to show their secrets and show what it is they do. But I think there's an acknowledgement. This is in learning management systems. And I think there's an acknowledgement of the fact that the products are all pretty good. They have customers are doing well with almost all the LMSs out there. How is it that you're going to use it? How are you going to creatively do it? And I want to be able to give a place that my customers can feel like they are really good at what they do. And if they're really good at what they do, give them a platform to talk about it. And the positive of that is as soon as they start talking about it, you find out the people who like to talk about it, who like to have that platform, that gives us the advocate to be able to sell. It means we're not having to then go back to the people who are sick of talking to customers, don't want to spend the time doing that, don't see any value in doing that. And instead we get the people who enjoy a coffee, a beer, a chat with someone, and give them an opportunity to do that and get to meet other people in their industry who want to do the same things they're doing. So I think it's just enabling. And I think that bringing that together, that thought together, it stops it being about sales, customer success, implementation, support. Instead of having that conversation, let's just talk about what are the strategies, what are the things we can do to bring that all together naturally.
Absolutely. Great to hear that insight. And now that Ben is back, a question for you as well was to see where you've seen that collaboration really work well within teams, where you've seen sales and CS really coming together.
Yeah, so apologies about that before, some technical issues, but I think the important thing to call out here as well is size of business, right? So I'm sure in the audience that we've probably got people working in large corporates, but then also people having a crack at building some early stage startups. So if we just separate those for a moment and just think about what supports collaboration, is two things in my mind. One is transparency and the second is commonality. So if we make sure that the communication is transparent, the goals are transparent, and everyone understands the role that they play, that is the first standpoint of really helping people understand of how we can start to unpack working together. The second part of that is commonality, being the fact of what is the common goals that we're trying to achieve. Now, usually as a business, there's a North Star. And that North Star being communicated effectively allows us to then talk about what is the collaboration required amongst teams. And when it comes to sales, that is the customer journey specifically. How are we giving that customer the best experience with interactions of our business? And so it does start at top of funnel, and top of funnel can arguably be marketing, or it could be frontline sales. And when it is frontline sales, it's around that customer onboarding process. And so, where that has also worked really well, and I think Catherine mentioned this before, is around then what I like to call is step through KPIs, which is basically how do you KPI one team on the other team as well. So in the sense of, if I'm frontline, I'm KPI'd on the customer success and the customer retention piece as well. So a portion of my KPIs may be based on the fact of how well the customers I bring into the business and how long they stay, versus, other than it just being on the ownership of customer success. So that's a couple of key call out points there. And then how that reflects in terms of large businesses and small businesses or startups, I think it's also around, okay, well, with large businesses, you see the ability to come together, run workshops. There's a question there that, I can answer that actually in a moment. But essentially it's around running those workshops and collaboration across those teams. But when you're talking about a more earlier stage of the business, I actually have seen it work really well when you have customer success and front-end sales work together to build the process from scratch and reflect on that process and give them that ownership. And so that's probably the last piece I would say in all of this is actually allowing people to own parts of that process together. And when you actually allow people to do that, that's when you see the best results. So that's, I guess, some of my points I'd like to share on that.
Yeah. Thank you. And in terms of, I guess, the ownership piece as well, I think before we get to that question is, how do you make sure that if I say, and I'm not sure this is what you mean, but I'm owning implementation, how do you not become a silo where it's kind of like I'm in every day, or I'm thinking about who is the next person, the next company to be implemented? How do I kind of still keep my view open?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's where this, alignment on the North Star and the KPIs come in, right? KPIs are there to drive behavior. And, when we're talking specifically around the sales functions, that's a really good lever to be able to pull to create the behaviors that you want and the focus that you want.
Great, thank you.
The other thing I would say on that piece is like, we need to be careful, especially with tech companies, that we don't become internally focused on our internal processes. If the business is coming together on value for customer, the customer is using our capabilities to drive value, and we align at that level, then the sharing of knowledge, the understanding of customer, the implementation versus a new sale, etc., it removes some of the want to actually hold those pieces of information close, because that's not in the best interest of the customer. And so I do think there's an element of how do we actually keep driving customer value towards the top of our, one of our values, results for customer. That's at the top of our stack. And so any decision we make is orientated around that. And I think that helps with the siloing piece.
Absolutely. Thank you. In terms of a question we just had that came through the chat around seeing perhaps people do, when I say a day in the life or walking in someone else's shoes, if you're CS or sales, where have we seen that maybe work or not work?
I'm happy to jump in on that one. Definitely something that I've seen tried a couple of times. I think that one of the things to really focus on is what type of team is actually already in the business. If you have a team of people who are actually really interested, and you can tell they're a team of people looking to move laterally across the business, up towards the business, really wanting to be able to work around, I think it's a really easy sell. I think it's an opportunity for them to be able to jump in, get to see that. The time where I've seen it be difficult is when you're actually trying to do this more to actually get people to realize the difficulties that probably that sales team's sitting there going, my gosh, it's so easy to be a CSM. And the CSM sitting there going, geez, I wish I was a salesperson. I actually only had to talk to people when they're selling. And that element, I think, is when it's a bit more difficult. And I think that it comes back to look at what it is that you can get out of it and communicating correctly on what the business wants to get out of that strategy. A lot of the time, like I said, the business will try and communicate it as like, hey, here's an opportunity for you to learn more. Here's an opportunity for you to grow. Here's an opportunity to do that. And that's awesome if you've got a lot of people in the business who want to do that. If you've got a lot of people in the business it's a longer standing business and they're pretty happy with what they're doing. They feel like they're doing their job well. And yeah, I think it's a much harder sell. And so instead, coming into that with the leadership of the business, letting them know that one of the big reasons they want to do this is so that way that you can better understand the guardrails of where it is that role sits. What is it that role cares about? So if you're a CSM and you're sitting there and you're trying to understand why it is that the salesperson doesn't want to jump onto that call that you want to do to be able to save them for retention, if you go sit in their shoes, potentially they have no KPI, no reason, no benefit to be able to actually sit there and build retention. Now, again, that's a totally different discussion. We probably need to have that, but it's a really good way for that person to be able to jump in and get to understand, okay, they care about sales, they care about the commission. And so that's how they're going to go. A lot of customer success managers will step back and go, well, I'm not a salesperson. I don't want to sell. And then they'll get asked by the salesperson, why is it you're not sending through CSQLs? Why is it that you're not getting a qualified lead from the CS team? And they need the salesperson to jump in and realize that, again, they may not be getting rewarded for that. That may not be how they're getting targeted. That may not be how it is they're doing, that the business is recognizing the amazing work they're doing. And so, again, I just think there's a transparency of leadership that needs to be really clear when this is rolled out. And that's where I've seen it fail, is making sure you know your audience. The leader of that team should be able to communicate and understand what their team needs to get out of that process, and make sure they communicate it clearly, and do a retrospective at the back end of it. Don't just do it and then go, great, done, tick the box, move on, everything's going to be great from here on out. You need to make sure your team goes in with an idea of what it is they're going to get out of it, because that helps them ask the right questions while they're in there, not just see it as a day that they're just going to sit and watch someone else do work. So a couple of things.
I've actually got a really good story to tell on this. At one point in my career, where I was in a business called Prosper, which is Australian online business lender, and essentially moved across to go help start a cross-functional team, which was called New Ventures. And so it was where we worked on new product innovation, and therefore, as a part of that team, we had a whole bunch of individuals who came from different areas and backgrounds, so product, marketing, operations, sales, customer success. And bringing all these people together from a day one stance to try and build a business within the business day one, it was actually pretty challenging, especially when you have paradigms of success, right? And so everyone has their way that they've experienced success. And I, admittedly, being heavily sales background, was working very closely with the product manager. And safe to say that we didn't see eye to eye. Definitely not from the beginning anyway. And so where we kept clashing quite a bit. And towards the end there, what we did was we stopped and reflected on the fact of going, okay, there's clearly things that you do that work, and there's clearly things that I do that work. How do we actually unpack this to make this work for all of us? And so it actually came through a day in the life of the shoes. And so what we started doing was I started taking on and learning product through my counterpart, and my counterpart started coming with me and doing sales and meetings. And what actually transpired from that was a massive mutual respect, to the point of where we're actually really good mates now. And we actually had some really good success from that. And what you started to see was the rest of the business unit actually start to do the same thing. So we would run Wednesday night pizza nights with sales, and it was basically pitching. So everyone would have a go at objection handling, running pitches, and that would be coming from product engineering, rest of the team, and then the other side of the team would actually be doing participating in sprints, retrospectives, all of that sort of stuff. So essentially that was a really good example of where a day in the life of the shoes can really support and bring people together to understand and value what it is and how other people do what they do.
I love that example. And I think it's so much more impactful when you can really see that day in the life. I think it's one thing I know I've definitely had something presented to me, whether it's at some kind of sales kickoff or some kind of meeting, and say, this is us aligned. We've got this strategy. This is how you're all going to work together. But it's actually having that time investment to do what your teams did, to really be able to sit in each other's shoes as well.
Yes.
I think the other thing when you're helping people build a resilient career, we were talking about this offline prior to, technology's changed a huge amount in the last 30 years. For anyone building a resilient career now, you kind of need three pillars. You need some kind of technical aspect, but you need all of the business acumen, the objection handling, yada, yada, yada. And then there's a mindset piece that kind of sits in a career that is resilient. I think we all have a natural tendency to err on two of those pillars. If you're in sales, you probably err on one set. If you're in CS, you err in a slightly different set. That WIFM concept of what's in it for me is having the team actually transfer and learn skills in the pillar that maybe they are less likely to go into, builds a career that will give them pivot points later on. And I think that's really important. And I think that's something that in technology, we're only really starting to realize that level of our profession, and how do we build people's careers so that as things change, which inevitably they are, customer success didn't exist as a career 15 years ago, that we've set people up for long-term success. So just, I think that swapping people in and out of roles, either for a day or in fact actually encouraging people to have a broad platform on their career base to ensure that they actually have touched product, they have touched marketing, even if it's only for a short period of time, or they have been in sales, even if that's not the place they feel most comfortable, will be a long-term, it's just an important piece of what we do when we're actually helping people with their own development.
One of the things I just want to pull out from that story, Ben, I think like, first of all, I love getting to hear that. But one of the things I'd love to quickly pull out there was the role play element. And I think that that's actually a thing you can do without having to go all the way down to the day in the life.
Yes.
People can get comfortable. Like Catherine, you said comfortable with uncomfortable. If you want to find someone who was the most uncomfortable role player ever, it was me. I hate doing role plays. However, I actually sat with a company called 10,000 Hours who did an amazing job of running my team and everyone through the ability to actually role play well, the ability to open yourself up to that discussion of role playing. And I just want to emphasize, like, without doing a day in the life, if you can actually get your team to be comfortable doing role playing, you can actually get a lot of these learnings by a one day, bring everyone together and go through it. Role playing's hard. I hate it, but I have seen so much benefit from it. And I watched the team after we got good at it. I watched the team. They'd be about to jump on a call. They'd pull the guy or girl next to them and just go, all right, I'm going to call this person. I think that they're going to be this. They're going to be arrogant. They're going to be this. They're going to be this. They're going to be this. This is going to be the conversation. Can we try this conversation? And they'd try it, and they'd run through that conversation, and they'd get on the phone. And I'll tell you what, most of the time it was better than they thought it was going to be, but they're also prepared. And I love the fact you brought role playing into that scenario, and I've seen it be so successful. So, yeah.
Great examples. Thank you. We had a comment come through that was also from, I say, the storytelling side. So this person is working in marketing, and they would love to see companies strengthen the connection between customer marketing and CS and sales teams. So being able to storytell being very important. Do any of you kind of have any comments or kind of takeaways on that?
I think so I'm not ignoring marketing because I hear the piece of that. One of the things I think we need to remember between sales and CS is it's a symbiotic relationship of which storytelling is a key part. And maybe that symbiotic relationship actually has marketing in the pyramid as well. The stories that sales has about a customer versus the stories that CS has versus the stories that marketing have. If you can bring all those things together and you share those stories on an ongoing basis, everyone's stronger. Because when sales is going out to talk to a customer, the first thing customer asks for is, well, tell me some stories, and they need to be local too. Don't tell me a story about America if I'm sitting in Singapore. And CS quite often has the depth of stories the customer is looking for at that early sales point. Equally, they have stories that marketing, if they could tell those stories out at the top of funnel, then they get more quality in the top of funnel. So putting in place capabilities of actually storytelling sharing is actually a really key part of what the business needs to do. And some of the things that Ben's talking about in terms of, how do we bring those, those opportunities for role play and storytelling is actually, I think, key to getting that to happen.
Actually, we'll jump in on the storytelling as well. So basically, from good old Simon Sinek, starting with the why, we all very much rallied around at that same business, Prosper, around our why, and it was the story of the why. Why did prosperous start. And, everyone was able to interact with that in their own way, whether it be the founder or co-founders in their own experience in running and starting small businesses prior to that business, but also then through the staff. And that came from customers that we were actually working with, also to our own interactions. And so where we really seen that become very powerful was from anywhere, from the board or executive, pitching to investment rounds, all the way through to frontline sales, actually having that same storyline, which was around, small businesses not being able to access funding and why we started this business and why we're on that journey. And it just resonated with every party that you would speak to, whether it be investors, whether it be the customer, whether it be partners, suppliers, future employees. That storytelling piece is, I would say, one of the most crucial parts to building a very successful sales journey for all counterparts.
Yeah, and I just jump on the back of that. I love the difference that comes. And again, I talked about the community that I got to build with Absorb, and that side that was just rich of stories. That was customers telling them what it is they do well, how it is they do it, gave us that opportunity, and then that led to, and one of the big ways that we were able to grow within the APAC region was one of the things that we started to do was bringing in a CS implementations manager or someone in the post sales into the pre-sales discussion before sale. What that allowed us to do was, yes, it took us a little bit of time, but gee, was that time paid back to us as we went through. They were able to give stories, give people ways that they were going to be able to use the product. They were able to also give some of those cautionary stories, give the stories of, if you're going to tell me in this case, your learning management system is terrible right now. There's a whole lot of customers that are successfully operating in that system. How's your data? How good is it? What is it you're going to put into our system? Because I don't want to be sitting here as the customer success manager later going, hey, like, you don't like our system, and the reason is because we put the same dirty data, the same bad habits into our system as you did the last one. And having that conversation allows the implementation to run smoother, allows the customer journey to run smoother, allows advocacy as we go down, and all of those conversations to be able to happen. So yeah, storytelling is just key and critical to that. So thank you for that comment.
Awesome, thank you. And following on from that point, Michael, when you do witness or experience some of that friction, so it is perhaps maybe not the best handover that you're given, or there's something else that kind of has fallen into your lap that you need to solve that you didn't necessarily cause. What are some kind of proactive ways that you manage that? If you're talking to, whether it's a sales counterpart, a marketing counterpart, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, and I think this is really important to, again, it's coming back to that, understand what it is that sales counterpart is coming to you because of. What is the underlying frustration? Is it the fact that because of that bad handover, we're not actually getting one of the big focuses that I always like to have is that customer acquisition cost, the payback period on that. So like, is it that the sales team's going, hey, at a year, I'm getting the business coming back to me and telling me that renewal isn't happening, and we're getting blamed for that as a sales team. It's like, well, let's understand the problem there. Let's look at, do we bring someone from post-sales into that pre-sales discussion? Do we go through that? And it's just, I think it's about sitting in the shoes of the other person, not always the whole time, but making sure that you come from understand what's the business pressures. We've talked about what leadership has actually given, what are the KPIs that you're working with, and what is it that lets you be successful. If I'm affecting that, or my team and the people in my team are affecting that person's ability to be successful, they should be frustrated. There should be difficulty in that. We need to fix that. And I think that the acknowledgement of the fact that before going down and trying to work out how to fix the problem, you've got to understand why that's such a big problem to that person in front of you. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the time, I don't think we do that. Instead, that we get our back up because, well, to me, that's not my most important thing. I've got 25 other things on the list that the board or my leaders are on my back about. And so instead of doing it the other way, have that conversation, talk about why it is that it may not be a priority for you at that time, why and how is it that we can work together to be able to fix that. And so, yeah, I just think it's make sure we understand the why. And again, Simon Sinek, I love the synergy here that we kind of bring that up. But yeah, understand the why. Understand the why behind why that's such a big frustration, and you can normally work to a pretty quick solution after you do that. Otherwise, you will spend hours going back and forth with one person, and with both of you probably thinking that it's redundant, at least for a little while.
It's all about striving for that alignment, I think, that we've got to all get to. All teams want to get to. As well. We're getting close to time, but if there are more questions, do please pop them in the chat. I was curious to know actually myself, and this is sort of an overarching kind of question that might apply to different teams, but are there some core metrics that you focus on to ensure success between CS and sales, if you were to pick one or two that you like to pay attention to? I'll go Catherine, if that's okay to put you on the spot.
Yeah, looks fine. So first thing, just to echo something we said earlier, it comes down to KPI alignment and transparency. So one thing I will say is, as someone who's just landing in a new organization, I'm working really hard to build my networks of influence, which sales is one of my networks of influence, and for that to be transparent, which includes me being transparent about how I'm measured. And so how I see success, and to have those conversations before we come under any form of stress. Now, sometimes you can't do that, but I would just, those things I think are really useful things to do as early as you possibly can. In terms of KPI alignment, I quite like NRR. In terms of, like, the business will talk and think in terms of ARR because it's a revenue metric and the board probably cares about that most. But I think NRR gives you a measure of not only did we successfully sell, but are we selling to people who we are actually maintaining over time? So it gives an insight into something other than purely where we are right now, but that other piece as well. Time, I mentioned it before, value, customer value. So time to first value, and how do you measure, that value ongoing? We measure it through use cases. We know how many user cases make an ideal sticky customer. How many above that do we, have we been able to grow? Because ultimately an organization will get value out of our capacity if they use it more extensively. And then the last one, which is, so that comes to the last measure that I would look at, which is adoption. It's, it's one thing to believe in the purchase promise. It's another thing for an organization to take whatever your capability is and bring it to real value for their organization. And I think adoption's that measure. So yeah, those are the three metrics I'd throw out there.
Three very good ones. I've written them down. Thank you. So we are getting close to the end, but before we do sign off, I wanted to ask the group to share kind of the one thing they'd like the viewers to kind of take away from this, based on the discussions we've had, or maybe something that hasn't even been mentioned. I'll go to you, Ben, to kick off, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So I think, it's just the one thing I want people to take from today is if you're seeing a lack of collaboration across the teams, is to go back and then reflect on those couple of points that we mentioned before, which was, is there then a lack of transparency? So what does the collaboration and communication look like between the teams? What's the alignment on the North Star? So, touching on those KPIs piece, how are you doing step in KPIs or remuneration, or as we also talked about, is role play something that needs to be considered? So it's just going back and looking and reflecting on what you have done and what you are doing to create that collaboration, and then also reflecting on what's not happening. So a bit of a gaps analysis of things that you can then go away and test and try.
Great, thank you, Ben. Michael?
I think we've kind of banged on this one pretty hard, but the collaboration is about understanding what other people are going through. And so I'll put that one as my highest one. But the other thing I will say is around building programs that actually have mutual benefit and actually give excuses for the business to be together. So again, when I talked about that community of practice, when I talked about the feedback, that feedback project, when I talk about those kind of projects, I really want to make sure that there's reasons why the salesperson is going to be key in that discussion. The product team is going to be key in that discussion. The customer success support team. There's a reason for all of them and the value that they can add, and it gives an opportunity for that natural collaboration to happen. So yeah, I think understanding the problem, understanding the way people are driven is really important. But secondly, I definitely would tell you that if your programs are siloed programs, if you're looking at feedback as a sales team, feedback as a support team, feedback as your product team is hating it. Trust me, they are. So look for ways that you can bring together and help the rest of the business, and also help with collaboration at the same time.
Great takeaway. Thank you. Catherine, lucky last.
So all relationships are cyclic. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. So I've talked a bit about, jumping into new relationships, but it doesn't matter where you are in your relationship cycle across sales and CS, it will come under stress, and it will come and it will have times of real success. But echo a little bit of what Michael said. It's like, look to the processes that you have within your business to actually bring the team back into alignment, especially where there's stress. Because, finding some success somewhere is often the key to unlocking some of the stressing that's going on. And look to the points of particular stress, which is, it tends to be any commission erosion, any workload ambiguities, and handover. So those are the three places that I would look to. Okay, if there is particular aggravation going on in those spaces, then they need work. So make them points of focus.
Wonderful takeaways from everyone. Thank you so much. And it's been a wonderful near hour with you all. Renee has actually just put in the Strive and waitlist into the comments. So definitely anyone who's watching, encourage you to sign up to that. So there's going to be more events, more mentoring and coaching opportunities that are happening through Strive-In. So I'd love to keep in touch with you that way as well. And thank you again to all the panelists, Catherine, Ben, Michael, for joining today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.